Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world that's equal parts breathtaking and brutal, the Ottoman Imperial Harem. You're about to become one of the Sultan's concubines, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. Not because someone's going to poison your sherbet, though they might, but because the world you're entering is all velvet cushions and sharpened daggers. It's beautiful, it's terrifying, and it's very much a game you didn't ask to play. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. No pressure, just good manners. Also, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Drop your city and local hour in the comments. I like knowing who else is up at weird hours listening to historical bedtime drama. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's still dark outside, just the faintest suggestion of dawn brushing over the domes and minarets of Istanbul. You're not in your bed anymore, though that word doesn't really apply here. Bed implies privacy, choice, comfort. You wake on a wide, raised platform with several other young women, each wrapped in layers of embroidered cloth, their faces soft with sleep or stillness. Around you, quiet shuffling. The daily dance begins. You've been here long enough to recognise the rhythm of the harem without anyone saying a word. The low groan of wooden doors opening, slippers padding against mosaic floors, the scent of rosewater drifting through air still clinging to the chill of night. A eunuch's cough echoes just a little too loud, then disappears. One of the senior concubines stirs and rolls off her side, and you know that's your cue to follow. You move carefully, always aware of posture, expression, elegance. That's been drilled into you since the day you were brought here. Breathe slowly, smile slightly. Never look directly at someone unless you're allowed to. This place, Topkapı Palace, is massive, but you're confined to one gilded corner of it. A delicate prison. You've heard whispers that the harem contains hundreds of women, maybe even 1,000 at its peak. And while the palace walls gleam with tiles and gold leaf, it's the rules that sparkle sharpest. There's a hierarchy thicker than the silk sashes you wear, and though you might not see the strings pulling at it yet, you feel them, always. You shuffle out of the dormitory into a hallway lit with flickering oil lamps. The walls are cool to the touch, and everything smells like jasmine and old incense. Down the corridor there's soft music, probably one of the musicians rehearsing for morning court. The sound winds through the harem like smoke. Today isn't a festival, but that doesn't matter. Every day inside the harem is ceremonial. Every hour is watched. You've been trained to wake before the sun, because that's when the valid Sultan, the Sultan's mother, likes to pray. You've never actually seen her up close, but her power hangs in the air like humidity. Her decisions shape your entire future. One visit to her chamber, one whispered endorsement, and your life could change. But for now, you're still one of the many. Valuable, trained, but easily replaced. There's something strange about waking up surrounded by so much beauty when you have so little control. The cushions are velvet, the floors are inlaid with mother of pearl, and the ceilings above your dormitory have hand-painted murals of gardens you'll never walk in. Some mornings you catch yourself staring at those murals, trying to memorize the shape of a tree or the color of a flower. You wonder if the artist ever saw the outside world when he painted them, or if, like you, he had to imagine freedom through a wall. You've been told you're lucky to be here. That's the script. Whether you came from a noble family fallen from grace or were captured during a border conflict, your path has now led to the palace, where everything is safer, fancier, more predictable, except for the part where any given night a tray might appear bearing your name, summoning you to the Sultan's chamber. But that's not today. Today is just another regular morning in the most regulated ecosystem on Earth. As you pass the training rooms on your way to the baths, a few girls are already kneeling on cushions, reciting poetry. Their voices are soft, melodic, sometimes out of tune, but no one corrects them this early. The harem tutors, old and lean like library cats, sip bitter coffee and observe. These women have been here for decades. They've seen girls rise to power and then vanish, remembered only as initials on old clothing ledgers. They know how little it takes to fall out of favour. Sometimes all it takes is aging. This morning, though, the girls are full of nervous energy. You overhear a snatch of rumour. Someone says the Sultan had a nightmare last night. He's been asking for different women to visit him lately. Superstition says when his dreams get bad, someone in the harem is going to be dismissed. Or worse, you wonder who it'll be this time. Before that thought lingers too long, you step into the bath chamber, the hamam. It's still warm from the heat stoked overnight. Steam coils upward like incense smoke, softening the stone walls and making the air thick with moisture. This is one of the few places where the masks relax a little. Not entirely, but enough to sigh, stretch, maybe even laugh quietly if no one of rank is nearby. As you strip and settle onto the smooth marble, a slave girl begins pouring warm water over your back. Her hands are gentle but practiced, moving with the same rhythm they've probably used on hundreds of other girls. The water carries away sleep and dread in equal measure. In the quiet of the hammam, your thoughts wander. You think of the girl who slept next to you last year. Safiye, the one with the soft singing voice. She was called to the Sultan's chambers once and never came back. No one ever explained why. Was she exiled, favoured, silenced? The truth is, no one ever really knows what happens behind those carved double doors. The harem is a place of beauty, yes, but also silence, secrecy and shadows that stretch far longer than the corridors. You close your eyes. For now, you're here, alive, clean, unchosen. And in the world of the Ottoman harem, that's its own kind of victory. The steam from the hammam still clings to your skin as you step back into the corridor, warm and dazed. You feel like you've been reborn, slick with perfumed oils, cheeks flushed, muscles soft. But the moment you're out of the bath, the spell of safety dissolves. Because next comes dressing. And dressing in the harem isn't about comfort or vanity, it's war by wardrobe. You follow the others to the dressing rooms, a chamber lined with openwork wooden cabinets and ornate mirror panels. It smells like cedar and saffron. There's a low murmur of voices, punctuated by the occasional sharp hiss of frustration. Everyone's calculating today's move. Who's watching? Who might be watching? Who do you want to notice you? You head to your corner. Each girl has her own tiny wardrobe niche, its content strictly regulated. Your collection is modest but elegant. Soft cottons, jewel-toned silks, one pair of embroidered slippers that don't quite fit. You reach for the deep purple sash, not too bold, not too forgettable. Purple's a tricky colour, royal but not presumptuous. It's a whisper, not a shout. That's the tone you need to hit today. Layer by layer, you wrap yourself in the uniform of a woman who might one day be summoned. Not today, probably, but soon, if you can just strike the right note. The silk brushes against your arms like a secret, cool and weightless. Your sash is tied in a double knot. Your veil sits just slightly lower to show your cheekbone, and your earrings are subtle enough not to offend but heavy enough to glint in the candlelight. You've become fluent in this language of cloth, thread and gesture. Every girl here speaks it. Every glance to the side is both admiration and reconnaissance. Around you, dressing becomes choreography. Girls help each other pin sleeves and adjust hair, but you never forget that every hand might hold a dagger someday. Metaphorically. Probably. Hopefully. The younger concubines, fresh arrivals, struggle with the unspoken rules. One ties her sash too high, another wears green on a day when green is reserved for the senior group. Mistakes like that don't go unnoticed. You see a seasoned concubine raise one painted brow and whisper something behind a jewelled fan. That's how lessons are taught here. Not out loud, never out loud, but through snickers, sideways looks, and quiet social exile. Some girls wear silks with patterns gifted by the Velid Sultan. Those are the elite, the ones already chosen, either by the Sultan or by fate. You nod politely to one such woman as she floats by. Her name is Dilara, and her smile has the softness of rose petals and the sharpness of a blade. She's a favourite, but not the favourite. That spot shifts constantly. A ghostly crown passed back and forth. The only thing more dangerous than not being noticed is being noticed too much. And then there are the ones who wear black. Technically not mourning, there's nothing official to mourn, but everyone knows what it means. These are the women whose names haven't been called in years. They dress in the dignity of shadows, carefully composed and always watching. Some whisper that a few of them used to be powerful once. Some say they tried to escape. Others say they've hidden things, jewels, letters, secrets, in the folds of their robes, waiting for the right moment to make a move that will never come. You keep your head down as you pass them, not out of disrespect, more like superstition. To look too long at the forgotten is to risk becoming one. The act of dressing may take an hour. You move slowly, carefully, like a chess piece finding its next square. There's no rush. The harem isn't built for speed. Time here stretches, folds in on itself. Some mornings seem to last a week, others vanish like smoke. Finally, a low chime echoes down the hall. It's not loud, but you feel it in your ribs. It means you're to gather. The day's formal rhythm is beginning. No more improvisation. You line up with the others, slipping your hands into your sleeves, head bowed just slightly. Your slippers whisper against the tile. As you enter the great hall of the harem, light from high windows spills across the floor in golden strips. You're reminded, again, how beautiful the prison is. Domed ceilings with blue Iznik tiles swirl above you. Marble columns rise like trees from a mythical forest. Every inch of this place whispers, you should be grateful, and part of you is. The rest is keeping watch. You move toward your assigned cushion and sit gracefully, your back straight, hands folded. The Valide Sultan's steward enters, her expression unreadable. Her robes are immaculate, her voice even. She begins to assign daily duties, study groups, performance rehearsals. You strain to hear which name she emphasizes today. You listen for yours, but it doesn't come. Still, your name not being spoken is its own kind of safety. From your cushion, you watch the silent hierarchy play out in posture and placement. The inner circle sits near the raised dais. These women are poised, effortless, just bored enough to suggest power without arrogance. The outer ring is where the rest of you orbit, hopeful moons around a sun that barely acknowledges your pull. Every so often a girl is reassigned to a new task: music, dance, embroidery, tutoring. These moments are critical. Every small shift could place someone one step closer to the Sultan's attention, or one step away. Today your assignment is unglamorous but valuable, helping the music master prepare for an evening performance. You're decent at the lute, and better at not embarrassing yourself in front of people who matter. It's a small opportunity, but here even small cracks can let in sunlight. The meeting ends. Girls rise in staggered motion, sleeves fluttering like wings. A few cast sideways glances, some calculating, others just curious. You smooth your veil, gather your skirts, and stand. Another day, another costume, another performance inside this eternal theatre. Outside the great hall, you pass by one of the outer courtyards. A breeze lifts the edge of your veil, and you catch a glimpse of the sky. Just a corner of it, soft blue fading to gold. You wonder how many other women in this place woke up hoping for the same thing, a way out, a way up, or maybe just a day without games. You adjust your sash. Time to go make music. The music room is tucked into a quieter corner of the harem compound, down a hallway lined with geometric tiles in cobalt and saffron. As you walk, your slippers barely make a sound, but your mind hums louder with each step. The air smells of sandalwood and something citrusy, maybe bergamot. That's how memory works in this place, linked to scent, to rhythm, to the sound of someone's voice drifting through paper-thin walls. Inside, the room is lit by a latticed window that slices the sunlight into patterns across the floor. Instruments line the walls, odes, lutes, reed flutes, and small hand drums with goat skin stretched taut. The music master is already there. An older man with sharp eyes and fingers that twitch like he's always playing something only he can hear. He doesn't bow or smile. He just nods when you enter, like you're a puzzle piece sliding into place, and you're not alone. A few other girls have been assigned here too, and you recognize them. Zeynep, the best singer among the junior concubines, is already practicing vocal runs, her voice sliding up and down like a cat stretching. Her notes echo softly against the domed ceiling, then disappear into silence. You nod at her, and she gives you a half smile, something close to real in this glass house of performance. You retrieve your lute from the storage bench. It's smooth and cool in your hands, familiar now. You've spent weeks learning this instrument, each string a step on the tightrope you walk every day. Music is more than a pastime here. It's performance, seduction, service. You're expected to master it with a mix of grace and invisibility, to delight but not distract, to be noticed but only by the right people and only in the right way. The rehearsal begins. The music master taps out a beat, slow and steady. You follow, plucking notes in rhythm, eyes flicking to the other girls to stay in sync. The melody is simple but haunting, one of those Ottoman court songs written for melancholy evenings, and moonlight strolls through the rose gardens you've only seen once or twice. As you play, you feel a shift, something in the air loosening. Music does that here. It unlaces the strict corset of harem life, even if just for a moment. Midway through the session, a pair of black eunuchs enters the room. You don't stop playing, but your heartbeat does an awkward stumble. One of them leans in to speak with the music master in low tones. The master glances at you, just once, just long enough to make your stomach flip. But then the eunuchs leave, and the rehearsal continues. No one says anything, but now the tension is thick enough to taste. You steal a look at Zenep, who subtly raises her eyebrows. Neither of you knows what just happened, but the whisper of it will cling to you for days. After rehearsal, you're dismissed to the courtyard for a brief respite. The sun has finally climbed high enough to warm the flagstones under your feet. You walk the perimeter, careful not to seem aimless. Harem life punishes boredom and leisure in equal measure, so you study, you observe. Nearby, a trio of older concubines sits cross-legged, embroidering cushion covers. Their fingers move like clockwork, but their conversation is low and deliberate. You catch phrases: shipment from the Bosphorus, new girl from Venice, jewels missing from the Green Chamber. Nothing concrete, but enough to know that today's gossip has shifted tone. Something's happening. Something always is. You pause near a fountain and pretend to admire the koi swimming inside. Their colours flash just under the surface like secrets. One of the eunuchs appears in the doorway carrying a tray with folded scrolls. He pauses, scans the courtyard and calls out 3 names. Not yours. Again, you're safe. The rest of the afternoon is yours, technically. You could spend it reading in the library alcove or practicing calligraphy. But instead, you return to your quarters and rearrange your wardrobe. A small, quiet rebellion, choosing silk over muslin for no reason at all. As you fold and refold your belongings, you think about the older women you saw earlier, the ones who stitch and watch. There's a quiet hierarchy among them that doesn't make it into the official scrolls. They're not favourites, not educators, not official advisors, but they've been here the longest, and long memory is its own kind of power. You think of one in particular, Fatma Hanum, who speaks rarely but with precision. She once told you, "In the harem, your only true possession is what you remember." You didn't understand it at the time. You're starting to now. Later, just before the call to evening prayers, a small commotion rattles the tranquility. Word spreads fast. A favoured concubine, Mehtap, has fallen ill. Some say it was spoiled almonds, others whisper that she was cursed. You don't know her well, but she's been close to the Valide Sultan for months now. If she falls from grace, the ripple will be felt across the harem, maybe even beyond it. You wonder if this is how the Sultan's attention shifts, through illness, through rumours, through calculated withdrawals. Maybe desire is just another form of absence. Dinner is served under the wide arches of the north wing. The dishes are modest tonight. Lentils with saffron rice, apricot stew, and soft rounds of bread warm from the fire. You sit with your usual group, but everyone's distracted, half listening to a nearby conversation about Mehtap. Someone says her eyes turned yellow. Another swears she's been taken to the private medical chamber, which no one's entered in months. A girl across from you jokes, quietly, that she wouldn't mind a week's rest in the medical rooms, even if it meant yellow eyes. You all laugh, a little too sharply. That's how you keep the fear from sticking to your skin, with laughter that sounds like it might bite. After dinner, the courtyard fills again. Some girls walk slowly, arm in arm, while others sit beneath the lemon trees, sharing stories. One girl sings a folk song from her hometown, and a few others hum along. You sit quietly on the edge of a stone bench, watching the lamplight flicker in the fountain's surface. Somewhere, far beyond the palace walls, Istanbul is roaring with life. The bazaar is probably winding down and the call to prayer echoing off stone and sea. You can almost hear the ferries rocking in the Bosphorus. Almost. Inside the harem, everything is still. Beautiful, controlled, and watching you back. You return to your sleeping quarters just after the final evening call to prayer has faded into the marble. The hush that settles over the harem at nightfall is unlike any other time of day, thick, heavy, and strangely comforting. No more duties, no more practice, no more pretending to be relaxed while constantly assessing your own angle in a shifting hierarchy. At night, everything slows down, at least on the surface. Somewhere, far beyond the palace walls, Istanbul is roaring with life. The bazaar is probably winding down and the call to prayer echoing off stone and sea. You can almost hear the ferries rocking in the Bosphorus. Almost. Inside the harem, everything is still. Beautiful, controlled, and watching you back. You return to your sleeping quarters just after the final evening call to prayer has faded into the marble. The hush that settles over the harem at nightfall is unlike any other time of day, thick, heavy, and strangely comforting. No more duties, no more practice, no more pretending to be relaxed while constantly assessing your own angle in a shifting hierarchy. At night, everything slows down, at least on the surface. The room is lit by a few low oil lamps, their golden glow flickering across the tiled walls like lazy shadows. You take your place on your cushion, fold your legs beneath you, and begin to unpin your veil. Most of the girls around you are doing the same, their movements automatic, almost synchronized. It's a strange sisterhood you all share. Strangers from distant lands, drawn together under a roof that glitters like a promise but closes like a trap. The air smells faintly of lavender and honey, a gift from one of the Velid Sultan's favoured perfumers, filtered down to the rest of you in small glass jars. You dab a little on your wrists, not for anyone else, just because it feels good to hold something luxurious in your hand, even if it isn't yours. Tonight, your group has been summoned for a session with the etiquette instructor, a quiet, skeletal woman known only as Nermin. No one knows how long she's been here, or whether she was ever a concubine herself, but her authority is unquestioned. She walks in without announcing herself, dressed in grey silk, and gestures for everyone to form a semicircle. You sit at the edge, trying not to slouch. The floor is cool under your legs. Nermin doesn't speak for a long moment. Then, in her usual soft, clipped tone, she begins the lesson, not in etiquette this time, but in colour theory. She explains the significance of each hue worn in the palace, how shades of blue convey tranquility and loyalty, how crimson implies passion or ambition. You already know most of it, but you listen closely anyway. A misread signal can mean exclusion or worse, accusation. She reminds you that under Sultan Ahmed Versus, a concubine once rose simply by wearing white for 30 days. White, the colour of humility, purity, silence. The Sultan noticed. She bore him a son. She died not long after, mysteriously, of course, but her name still gets whispered like a magic spell. When Nermin dismisses you, it's not with words but a flick of her hand. Everyone bows slightly before dispersing. You trail behind the others, your thoughts a little clouded now, as if her lesson pulled loose some thread in your memory. You're not from here. None of you are. You come from Circassia or Georgia or Albania. You remember the soft green hills of your childhood, a river near your village where the water was always cold and clear. You remember singing to yourself in the fields. And then, the forgetting, a ship, chains that weren't quite chains, learning new words in a language that still doesn't feel like home. You were told the Sultan's harem was a place of honour, that here you would live in refinement surrounded by art and intellect, that your talents would be nourished. No one mentioned the layers of stents, the games behind the games, the fear disguised as ritual. Back in your chamber, you fold away the day's clothing and slip into your sleep robes. The fabric is soft, barely clinging to your shoulders. You brush out your hair with a comb of ivory and gold, an older girl's hand-me-down passed along like a whisper. The room is quieter now, voices dimming, breathing slowing. You lie on your side, facing the wall, your mind still churning gently. This is when the private thoughts come. You think about the colour you wore today, purple, royal, but not presumptuous. You think about Mehtap, the favoured concubine who took ill. You think about how close she was to power, and how quickly it slipped away. You wonder who will fill that vacuum, because someone always does. No vacancy in the harem lasts long. A soft tap on the wooden frame of the doorway interrupts your thoughts. Everyone goes still. That sound means only one thing. A eunuch is present. He appears in the entrance, his face expressionless, his hands clasped. In his grip is a tray. Your heart stutters. You're not the only one watching. He clears his throat, then reads 3 names. Not yours. The silence that follows is as loud as a drumbeat. The 3 girls named rise slowly, smoothing their robes and averting their eyes. No one speaks to them. No one wishes them luck. That would be too dangerous, too obvious. You exhale, only then realizing you'd been holding your breath. Again, you're safe, but a small part of you wonders how much longer you'll be invisible. The girls follow the eunuch out of the room, their slippers whispering like secrets against the stone. Once they've gone, the quiet returns, and with it, a kind of subtle recalibration. Everyone rearranges their thoughts, their ambitions, their mental rankings, who's left, who's next. Someone breaks the silence with a soft snore. and a ripple of relieved laughter passes through the room. It's not much, but it's enough to make the air feel lighter. You roll onto your back and stare at the ceiling mural, swirling vines, endless blue skies, birds in flight. You wonder if the artist ever meant those birds as a joke. Freedom, painted inside a cage. As your eyes grow heavier, your mind drifts. You think of your mother's voice, though you can't remember what she was saying. You think of your own name, your original name, the one they made you forget when you arrived. You think of stories and poetry and the colour white. And just before you fall asleep, you remember something Nermin once said, almost in passing. The most powerful woman in the harem, if never the most beautiful. She's the one who knows what to forget and what to remember. You tuck that thought into the folds of your memory, carefully, quietly, because one day you might need it. Morning comes again, soft and gold, slippered flowing through the filigreed window screens like a whispered secret. You're already awake before the light reaches your face. In the harem, the body adjusts to its own clock, a silent one, set to alert you to footsteps in the dark or a tray with your name on it. But today, nothing came in the night. Just the slow, steady breathing of the girls around you, some curled up like cats, others flat on their backs as if surrendering to a dreamless sleep. You rise slowly, stretching your arms beneath the thin cotton of your sleeping robe. The floor is cold beneath your feet. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and glance out the window. Birds wheel lazily in the pale sky above the palace rooftops. From here you can't see the city beyond the walls, but you can hear its distant rustle, the low, steady breath of a world you're forbidden to enter. You're not scheduled for music today, nor calligraphy, nor stitching. Instead, you've been summoned to assist one of the elder concubines with a task, preparing a guest suite for a visiting foreign dignitary. That kind of work may sound like a punishment, but in the harem, any opportunity that places you near the seat of power, near the flow of information, is a gift wrapped in dust and drudgery. You dress quickly, nothing elaborate. Pale green silk with gold trim, humble but not dull. Hair tied back in a braid, no jewellery, a spritz of rosewater behind your ears. You slip out of the dormitory and follow the tiled corridor toward the east wing, where the older concubines keep quiet dominion. You meet her near the guest chambers. Her name is Halime, and she walks with a silver-tipped cane and eyes that miss nothing. Once she was the Sultan's favourite, 3 reigns ago. Now she's a relic with power hidden in every wrinkle. She doesn't greet you with warmth or cruelty, just a glance and a nod. We're to prepare the velvet suite, she says, for a Venetian envoy. You won't see these rooms, but the Sultan will show them to someone who matters, so everything must gleam. You nod and follow her inside. The room smells stale and faintly of clove. Dust halos in the shafts of morning light. You roll up your sleeves, retrieve a cloth, and begin. As you polish gilded wood and straighten silk pillows, Halim speaks. Not directly to you, but into the room, like she's narrating for someone unseen. You know, Venetian envoys always pretend they've never heard of the harem, but they ask more questions about us than about the fleet, she says, adjusting a tapestry. They want to know what we wear, what we eat, whether we sleep alone. You say nothing, just nod as if that's interesting, which it is, because there's truth there, about how fascination and fear twist around each other when outsiders speak of the harem. You've never seen one of these foreign men, but you've heard about them. Pale, perfumed, talking too loudly. They don't believe the harem is real, at least not the way it actually is. They imagine it as a garden of eternal pleasure, where women drape themselves across cushions and wait to be admired. They have no idea how tightly the strings are pulled behind the silks. As you work, Halim continues to talk, drifting between instruction and recollection. She tells you how once, long ago, she stood on the balcony beside the Sultan during the public parade. She was dressed in white and gold. People below wept to see her beauty, she says. Some threw coins, someone fainted. You wonder how much of that is true. You also know that questioning her version of the past would be unwise. You finish your part of the cleaning quickly, wiping down the carved wooden screen near the window, arranging bowls of sugared dates and dried apricots, laying out towels embroidered with imperial insignia. Then Halime dismisses you with a gesture, already turning to whisper something to a eunuch waiting by the door. You bow and leave, heart beating a little faster. You're not sure if today was a test or a reward, or both. On your way back to the inner courtyard, you pass the black eunuch's quarters. The door is slightly ajar, and for half a second you hear voices, male voices, discussing something you don't quite catch. You pause just a moment too long. A eunuch steps into view and looks directly at you. You bow and move along, pulse quickening. They saw you, or maybe they didn't. Either way, you file that hallway, and the sound of those voices away for later. Not everything is meant for your ears, but sometimes your ears are all you have. Back in the courtyard, the sun is higher now, casting sharper shadows. You sit beneath one of the pomegranate trees, your back against the warm stone, and take a rare moment to rest. You watch the other girls as they pass, veils fluttering, eyes low. Some have already been summoned once or twice. Others wait in that anxious in-between state, hoping, dreading, preparing. You're somewhere in the middle. One of the newer girls, barely 13, sits beside you. Her name is Ayla. She asks if it's true that the Sultan has blue eyes. You nod. He does, pale, like the sea in winter. But you add that he rarely looks anyone in the eyes. She asks what he smells like, and you laugh softly. Like amber, you say, and sometimes like horses. It's strange, you think, how quickly even the most overwhelming things become ordinary here. You could recite the scent profile of the Sultan, the embroidery pattern of the Valide Sultan's favourite robe, the exact sound the lamps make when they're being cleaned at dawn. But you haven't seen your own face reflected in sunlight in over a year, only in polished metal or ripples in a bath. The mirrors here lie, softened and flattering. The truth of your appearance is a memory you've learned to let go of. A shadow falls across you. You look up, a eunuch again, but not with a tray, just a message. The Valide Sultan wishes to review the poetry submissions today. You've been selected. Your stomach knots. You hadn't even known your last piece was submitted. Someone must have passed it along without telling you. Or someone is testing you. You rise, brush off your robe and bow slightly. Then you follow the eunuch toward the Valide Sultan's chambers, trying to keep your breathing even. This could be nothing, or everything, and as always, it's impossible to know which until it's far too late. The path to the Valide Sultan's chambers is lined with quiet danger, beauty so overwhelming it becomes disarming. The tiles on the walls glitter with shades of azure and gold, each one hand-painted with floral patterns that twist like the harem's hierarchy. You've walked these corridors before, but never this deep into the private wing. The silence here feels heavier. No laughter, no music, not even footsteps except your own, echoing behind the eunuch leading you forward. He doesn't speak or look back. He doesn't have to. You follow without hesitation, though your heart thumps against your ribs like it's trying to escape. You've never met the Valide Sultan face to face. She's a name, a presence, a myth wrapped in brocade and whispers. The Sultan's mother, once a concubine herself, now holds more power than most men in the empire. She can orchestrate political alliances, raise a girl from obscurity to stardom, or erase someone so thoroughly even the bed linens forget their scent. Her reach touches every part of the palace. Every single step you take right now feels like one more drop toward the centre of a very deep, very still pond. You arrive at a small antechamber. The eunuch gestures for you to wait. He disappears behind a silk curtain and doesn't return for several long breaths. The silence around you sharpens. A pair of servant girls are quietly folding linens in the corner, their eyes fixed downward. You sit as instructed, hands folded neatly in your lap, back straight. You can hear your heartbeat in your ears. This isn't fear exactly. It's more like the sensation of standing at the edge of something enormous. Something that might move. Finally, the eunuch returns. He gestures. You rise, smooth your robes, and step through the curtain. The Valide Sultan's private salon is quiet, dim, and filled with the scent of ambergris and aged paper. Books line the walls and carved walnut shelves. There are flowers on every surface, lilies, violets, narcissus, and a fountain bubbles softly in the centre of the room, masking any outside sound. She sits on a raised dais near the window, draped in layers of silk so fine they shimmer like mist. Her face is older but sharp with awareness, eyes like coins, dark and weighty. You bow as low as you've ever bowed. She gestures for you to rise and step closer. No words yet, just eyes taking you in, assessing every thread, every blink, every breath. A scroll lies open beside her, your poem. It was about the sea, she says at last, voice smooth as stone rubbed by time. You compared it to grief. Your mouth is dry, but you manage a nod. Yes, Valida Sultan. She lifts one brow. You have not seen the sea in many years, I assume? No, Valida. A pause. Her fingers trail the edge of the scroll, not looking at it now, but at you. And yet you remember it clearly enough to write like this. I try to remember with detail, you say softly, even when it hurts. She considers you for a long, long moment. Good, she says. Pain is a more faithful muse than joy. That's not a compliment exactly, but it's not a rebuke either. She says nothing else for a time, just waves her hand and turns away. A servant appears at your side like smoke and escorts you out. You bow once more and leave, heart racing, knees slightly shaking. You don't know what just happened. You're not sure if it was praise or warning. Probably both, definitely both. Back in the corridor, the eunuch who brought you doesn't speak. He simply nods for you to follow him again. As you retrace your steps through the inner corridors, something strange begins to happen. Girls you pass bow slightly, or glance at you a little longer than usual. Word moves fast here. Not just that you were summoned, but that you were read. That the Valide spoke to you directly, that you were noticed. Being noticed in the harem is a currency, and now you've got a coin or two in your pocket. You return to the courtyard, but you don't sit under the pomegranate tree. You move to the embroidery pavilion instead, where a few of the girls are working on an imperial bedspread. Rich gold thread swirling through midnight blue silk. You're not assigned to this group, but no one tells you to leave. Instead, a girl scoots over and offers you a needle and hoop. This is how it happens. Not with announcements or scrolls, but with space being made, with silence being offered instead of hostility. As you stitch, you overhear the hum of gossip flitting between the girls like bees through lavender. Someone says Mehtap hasn't returned from the medical wing. Someone else claims her sister has been reassigned to the kitchens as punishment. Another says she was poisoned, slowly, by small doses over time. No one knows for sure, but everyone agrees that her absence leaves room for someone else. You don't say a word, you just keep stitching. Later, at the midday meal, you're served slightly ahead of the others. Not first, not enough to be a headline, but earlier. Someone in the kitchen must have been told. Another coin dropped into your invisible purse. You sit near Zeynep and Ayla. They both look at you differently now. Zeynep is curious, but not cold. Ayla seems wide-eyed with awe. What did she say? Ayla whispers between bites of pilaf. You take a moment before answering. She said I remember things well. It's not the full story, but it's enough. After the meal, the day drifts forward again with the strange, weightless rhythm of harem life. You're not given any new tasks, no punishments either. Just watched, lightly, like someone's waiting to see what you'll do next. You visit the library alcove in the late afternoon. It's quiet there, and the air smells of dry parchment and rose ink. You pick out a slim volume of poems, Persian from the early Safavid court, and settle onto a cushion by the window. Outside, a minaret pierces the sky like a needle threading the heavens. You think about what the Valide said. Pain is a more faithful muse than joy, and you wonder, quietly, deeply, how much pain she had to carry to rise so high. As you read, you imagine her younger, sitting where you are now, learning, watching, memorizing, turning bruises into knowledge, love into leverage. A soft bell chimes in the corridor. Evening is near, the air cools, and somewhere far above, in chambers you've never seen, decisions are being made that will shape the next name called, the next robe worn, the next girl chosen. You close your book gently and whisper the last line of the poem into your sleeve like a charm. Even the sky must kneel to the sea. You smile to yourself. Let them watch. You've learned how to be noticed. That night, the harem exhales a little more slowly. The air is warm, heavy with summer heat and the lingering scent of jasmine from the courtyard vines. You lie awake on your cushion, eyes open in the dark, listening to the usual lullaby of muffled laughter, quiet shuffles, the rustle of silk as someone turns in their sleep. A few girls murmur in hushed tones across the room. You catch only pieces of their whispers. Mehtap, the Venetian, purple tray. It doesn't matter. You already know the flavour of their words. Speculation, envy, fear. You've felt it yourself. The truth is, power in the harem doesn't move in straight lines. It folds, loops, coils like smoke. Just because someone disappears doesn't mean they're gone. And just because someone speaks to the Valida Sultan doesn't mean they're safe. That's the part none of the new girls understand. They think elevation means stability. But here, the closer you are to the flame, the more flammable you become. You roll onto your side, the embroidered cushion pressing gently into your cheek. Tomorrow will bring something else. Another shift. You can feel it in your bones the way some people feel storms in their knees. Change is coming, and you don't know if it will touch you or pass over. That's the hardest part. How quietly fate moves through this place. Morning comes with a haze of gold light and birdsong. You wake to the sound of footsteps outside the dormitory, but it's not the eunuchs this time. It's the chief black eunuch himself. His presence always carries a certain pressure, as though the air around him has been gently but permanently rearranged. He's tall, older, dressed in black robes embroidered with the imperial seal in silver thread. The other eunuchs part for him like silk curtains. He doesn't speak as he enters, but everyone knows why he's here. He never comes for nothing. You sit up, quickly adjusting your robe and veil, heart thudding in your chest. The room stills. The other girl sits straighter, eyes flicking toward him without daring to meet his gaze. He clears his throat, then calls out one name. Dilara. A ripple passes through the room, relief for most, disappointment for a few, calculation for everyone else. Dilara rises slowly, not smiling. She knows better. She glides across the room with the practiced grace of someone who's been summoned before. She disappears into the corridor behind the eunuch, leaving behind a faint trail of sandalwood and tension. You watch her go, and somewhere beneath your breath you release a sigh, not of relief, but of reset. Your name hasn't been called. That doesn't mean you're safe. It just means today, someone else plays the next round. Later, during the midday gathering in the central chamber, the Valid Sultan herself appears. This is rare. Most of the time she rules from behind curtains and messengers. But today she arrives like the sun itself, surrounded by attendants veiled in gauze, robes trailing like waves of silk behind her. The room shifts the moment she steps inside. Conversation dies. Movement stops. You and the others bow deeply, pressing your foreheads to the cool marble floor. She speaks only briefly, her voice quiet but unmistakably firm. There is talk, she says, that the harem forgets itself, that some among you think influence comes from beauty alone, or wit, or even ambition. A pause. No one breathes. Let me remind you, this place belongs to Allah, the Sultan, and me. With that, she sweeps from the room. It takes a full minute before anyone dares to move. After she leaves, the mood is strange, anxious, but also energized. The hierarchy reasserts itself like a whip cracked in midair. A few girls whisper guesses about who the warning was for. Some think it was aimed at Dilara, others think it was for the foreign girls who've grown too bold lately. You suspect it was aimed at everyone. That's the brilliance of the Valida Sultan. She doesn't name names, she doesn't have to. You return to your quarters with your mind buzzing. That speech wasn't just a warning, it was a lesson, a test. She wants to see who stumbles under pressure, who panics, who makes a mistake. And mistakes in the harem are never forgiven, only remembered. In the evening, you visit the perfumery chambers. It's your weekly duty, helping the head perfumer blend oils, distill essences, organize the little glass vials in their golden racks. You love this task more than most. There's something peaceful about it, even as it reminds you that you're always being prepared for someone else's pleasure. Today, the head perfumer is working on a special blend. For Dilara, she says with a shrug, jasmine, musk, and a touch of cedar, a scent meant to linger. You nod and help measure the ingredients. The jasmine is sharp and sweet, the musk heavy and warm. When mixed, they create something alluring, intoxicating, but also dangerous. It reminds you of Dilara herself. She'll be sent to the Sultan tonight, the perfumer says, not looking up. It's been decided. You wonder if Dilara knows yet, or if she's waiting in her room, already dressed, already scented, already steeling herself for whatever this night brings. Back in your dormitory, the evening falls quickly. Lamps are lit, veils are lowered, conversations soften. Dilara still hasn't returned. Some girls pretend not to notice. Others whisper that this might be the night, that if she pleases the Sultan, she might rise beyond concubine status, be named Haseki Sultan, the chief favourite, or even bear him a son. You wonder what that feels like, to be that close to power, to stand on the edge of a knife so sharp it cuts with both glory and ruin. You lie down on your cushion and close your eyes. Tomorrow the gossip will take on a new shape. The hierarchy will shuffle. New names will be whispered, old ones forgotten. But for now, the harem holds its breath again. Because every night, someone's life changes, and everyone else watches, wonders, and waits. The next morning begins like a stretched out breath, soft and uncertain. The sun hasn't fully risen, but the palace is already stirring. Servants whispering in the halls, slippers brushing over stone, the rustle of silk against silk. You lie awake long before you move. There's a specific stillness that follows a royal night, a peculiar silence that seems to thrum with waiting. Everyone knows what happened, or at least what didn't, and no one dares ask directly. Dilara hasn't returned. Her cushion, just 2 rows from yours, remains untouched. Her perfume still lingers faintly like a ghost draped in jasmine. Girls glance towards the space without speaking. 1 or 2 exchange loaded looks, and you just keep your face neutral and your thoughts to yourself. Because the harem has a language that speaks in absences. Who isn't there? Who hasn't returned? Whose earrings sit untouched on the dressing tray? But when you rise and dress, something subtle has shifted. Your name is on the morning duty scroll, but this time it isn't embroidery or perfume blending or attending the library tutors. Today you're summoned to calligraphy practice in the Golden Chamber. This is a room reserved only for the elite. A space lined with polished cedar, gold leaf panels, and rare manuscripts guarded like treasure. Being assigned there means something, even if no one says what. You walk the halls with measured steps, acutely aware of every glance. You're being watched again. Not openly, but peripherally, like a candle's reflection caught in a mirror, always flickering, never direct. Inside the Golden Chamber, a tutor greets you with the nod he gives to serious students. His beard is trimmed neatly, his robes fine but unshowy. You bow, then settle on a cushion with your brush, ink, and parchment. The air smells like cloves and ink. The only sounds are the scratch of brushes and the steady drips of a water clock in the corner. You begin your practice slowly, Arabic script, flowing like ribbons in water. This isn't just writing. This is elegance in motion, a discipline of balance and restraint. The tutor walks among the girls, offering murmured corrections and rare praise. When he pauses behind you, you feel the weight of it, not just his presence, but his silence. After a moment, he places a slip of paper beside your hand. It's not a critique. It's a copy of a poem by Fuzuli, the great poet of love and longing, one of the Sultan's favourites. The implication is clear. You're being encouraged. You copy the verses with care, each stroke of your brush deliberate. Your hand is steady, but your mind is racing. Who submitted your last poem? Was it Halim, someone close to the Velia? Or was it someone with even more power? Someone who saw something in your words and decided to test the depth of your talent? Outside, a light breeze stirs the courtyard leaves. Inside, you finish your final line. Love is a fire, and I am ash. You wonder how many women in this place have felt the truth of those words in their bones. After calligraphy, you're dismissed to the courtyard, but no one says much to you, not even Zainab. It's not unkindness, it's assessment. You're becoming harder to define, and that makes people wary. You sit beneath the fig tree near the central fountain. The water gurgles steadily, and the branches above cast leaf-dappled shadows on your silk robe. You pick apart a dried fig, its sweetness clinging to your fingers, and eavesdrop on a conversation nearby. The topic, of course, is Dilara. Someone claims she's been named Haseki Sultan. Another insists she's been moved to the third court, where only the Sultan's favourites dwell. A bolder voice says she was disappointing, sent to the old palace in silent disgrace. The truth, as always, floats somewhere in between. You watch Ayla approach you with a bundle of fabric in her arms. I'm supposed to deliver these to the laundresses, she says, but I've never been to that wing. Will you come with me? You nod, taking half the bundle to ease her load. Together you wind your way through lesser-travelled corridors, the two of you passing an old copper urn that always smells faintly of cardamom, then through the breezeway where the floor tiles are worn into faint dips from decades of slippered feet. As you walk, Ayla glances at you sideways. Do you think Dilara will come back? You shrug gently. She might, but if she doesn't, she's either very lucky or very unlucky. Ayla frowns. Isn't it lucky to be chosen? You stop in the corridor and look at her. Really look. She's barely past childhood. Big eyes, soft voice, dreams still fresh and untested. It depends what you're chosen for, you say quietly, and what happens after. You reach the laundry wing, hand off the bundles, and return the long way past the outer gardens. Well, the wall that looks out onto the gardens. The harem doesn't allow for detours, but there's something comforting about knowing that just beyond the lattice is a world full of dirt and weather and things that aren't scented with rose oil. That evening, the dormitory feels tighter, the silence heavier. Maybe because everyone's still waiting for Dilara to reappear, or maybe because they know someone new will be summoned soon. The rotation is constant, and no one can predict the rhythm of the Sultan's preferences. Some say he picks names based on dreams. Others insist the Valide arranges it all herself. You lie awake as the oil lamps are extinguished one by one. You hear the soft snores of the girl nearest you, the creak of the window shutter shifting in the breeze. You're not sure if you want your name called. You're not sure if anyone does, not really. What you know is that once it happens, you're never quite the same again. Some girls rise, briefly shine, then are sent away. Some stay and become powerful. A few bear children, sons who could become sultans. But even then, no one is safe. As sleep begins to wrap itself around you, a memory surfaces. Your first day in the harem. You'd been terrified, disoriented. You hadn't known where to look, what to say, how to breathe without being corrected. Now you know how to move without noise, how to speak without words, how to disappear and reappear, depending on what the day demands. You've adapted. But beneath all that quiet grace, one thing remains. You're still waiting for your turn. Whether that means glory or ruin, you have no way of knowing. Only that it will come, eventually. The following day begins not with footsteps or whispers, but with music. Soft notes from a nave flute floating through the corridors like morning incense. It's a rare way to wake in the harem, and that alone sets everyone on edge. Music so early usually signals an event, a change or worse, a visitor. And in the harem, visitors are never just guests. They're tests in disguise. You sit up slowly, stretching your arms as the chill of the tiled floor presses through the thin cushion beneath you. Around you, other girls are stirring, murmuring questions to each other. Ayla glances your way with wide eyes. "Is it a festival?" she asks. You just shake your head. "It's not that kind of music." You dress quickly in a dusky pink silk robe with bronze embroidery. It's a neutral choice, modest, lovely, forgettable. You've learnt that some days are meant for brilliance, and others are better faced in camouflage. By the time you reach the inner courtyard, the air is heavy with anticipation. Girls linger in clusters, pretending to busy themselves with handwork or tidying, but their eyes flicker toward the east entrance. That's where the flute music's coming from, where a pair of eunuchs now wait, unsmiling and immobile. Soon enough, the doors part, and the visitor arrives. It's not a foreign dignitary this time, not a woman from the outer palace. It's the Valide Sultan herself again, accompanied by two richly dressed women and a small entourage of eunuchs. One of the women is familiar. You've seen her from a distance in the palace gardens, one of the Sultan's sisters, known for her sharp wit and stronger temper. The other is unknown to you, but she carries herself like someone used to being obeyed. Even her silence is assertive. All chatter ceases, the air changes. You lower your eyes, as do the others, bowing your heads as the Valide glides into the space and gestures for everyone to rise. Her voice is clear, but gentle. Today, our palace welcomes a guest from the western provinces. She has come to observe our court and offer gifts of poetry and textiles. You will behave accordingly. So that's what this is, an inspection dressed in politeness. And poetry, always poetry, and you are selected, along with Zainab and 3 other girls, to represent the harem's talent. You're not given time to change, only handed a cushion, and led to the shade of the courtyard fig trees, where a few guards quietly arrange a carpeted stage of sorts. The guest is seated on a cushioned bench, her expression unreadable. The Sultan's sister watches from behind a veil, fanning herself lazily, but with sharp eyes. Zainab is asked to sing first. Her voice, smooth and unshaken, floats upward, like silk unravelling in the air. She sings of longing, of rivers that bend and break like promises. It's beautiful, dangerous too. You can see the way the guest cocks her head slightly, listening closely. Then it's your turn. You're handed your own poem, one you wrote weeks ago and thought forgotten. Someone again has remembered. You kneel on the cushion, bow your head, and begin to read. Your voice is calm, even, you recite from memory, though you hold the scroll in your lap. The words are about waiting, not just for a lover, but for a future that never quite arrives. You don't look up until the final line. I sleep beneath a sky that never opens. When you meet the guest's gaze, her lips curve. Not quite a smile, but something thoughtful. She leans over to whisper something to the validator, who nods once, then flicks her eyes in your direction. That's it. No applause, no reward, just glances and murmurs, but in this place that's louder than trumpets. When the performance ends, the guest stands and walks the perimeter of the courtyard. The girls bow again as she passes, but you keep your eyes on the stone tiles. To look too long would be ambitious. To look away too quickly would be foolish. After she departs, everything loosens. The girls exhale, some laughing quietly in relief. The music ceases, and the courtyard empties slowly, like sand draining through a sieve. You remain behind, not by order but instinct. Something in the way the Valide looked at you is still ringing in your chest. Not disapproval, not even recognition. Something quieter. A mental note, maybe. Halima finds you sitting there not long after. She leans on her cane, eyes narrowed beneath her veil. She asked about your poem, she says, and you don't need to ask who she is. Said your phrasing reminded her of a poet in Aleppo. You nod, unsure what to do with that. Halima sighs. Be careful. Being compared to someone real is the first step toward becoming a threat. That night, no name is called. No one is summoned. Instead, a sense of calm settles over the dormitory. Tense, watchful calm, like everyone's holding their breath but not sure why. You lie on your cushion, staring at the dark ceiling, and wonder if Dilara's in the Sultan's chambers now, or somewhere else entirely. No one has seen her in days. No one will say where she's gone. You also think of the guest, the woman from the provinces, who looked at you as though she saw something useful, or at least memorable. You wonder what she said to the Valide. You wonder if that comparison to the poet in Aleppo was a compliment or a warning. A long time ago you used to think poetry was just a way to remember the things you loved. Now you know better. Here, poetry is currency, seduction, strategy, and you're starting to learn how to wield it. The morning after the poetry display carries a strange flavour. Neither triumphant nor calm, just watchful. You can feel it in the way the servants move more briskly, in the silence between footsteps in the corridors, in the fact that no one has yet returned to Dilara's empty cushion. Her absence has begun to stretch thin like old silk, no longer shocking, just unsettling. A void that hums like a warning. No one says her name now, but it looms behind every glance. You rise before the sun finishes climbing and dress carefully, this time choosing a robe in deep teal with pale silver trim. A calculated colour, neither too subdued nor too loud. Respectful, present. The sort of shade that suggests you're aware of your position, but aren't reaching for something that isn't yet yours. When you exit the dormitory, a eunuch is already waiting for you, standing with his hands folded in front of him. He doesn't speak at first, simply tilts his head in that way they do when they're delivering you to something important. You'll assist in the scriptorium today, he says finally. The Valida Sultan has requested certain texts be transcribed for review. You nod, heart steady but alert. Another subtle shift. A chance to be near power again. This time not performing, not dazzling, just working quietly, inside the machinery of the harem's intellectual world. The scriptorium is a hidden gem of the palace, one most of the concubines never enter. It's not meant for them. It's where scholars and scribes labour over court records, prayer books, scientific treatises, and royal decrees. But today, a few concubines, yourself included, are brought in to assist with copying out selections of poetry and spiritual verse. The room is cool and still, the walls lined with shelves that stretch so high you can't see the tops without craning your neck. Dust motes drift lazily in shafts of light filtering through narrow windows. The air smells of ink, paper, and something older, leather bindings maybe. History in its most literal form. You're given a table near the back and a scroll to transcribe. It's a collection of devotional poetry by Rumi, heavy on metaphors about divine longing and soul-splitting desire. You unroll the scroll carefully, smoothing the parchment with your fingertips. The calligraphy is dense, flowing, a challenge to decipher. Your job isn't to interpret, just to copy, but the words still sink into you. The wound is the place where the light enters you. You pause, let that line linger, then dip your brush and begin. Around you, the other scribes work in silence. A few speak quietly to one another in Persian, a language you only partly understand, but their tone is respectful. You feel out of place and yet exactly where you're meant to be, like a misplaced gem that accidentally landed in a crown. Midway through the morning, a scholar walks past and pauses at your desk. He watches you work without interrupting, then makes a quiet noise of approval before moving on. It isn't much, but in a place where silence weighs as heavily as speech, it counts. By the time you're dismissed, your hand aches and your eyes burn a little from focusing so long. But you're filled with something strange and rare, a sense of usefulness. Not beauty, not grace, not performance, just value. As you exit the scriptorium, you hear low voices in a nearby corridor, two eunuchs speaking in clipped, hushed tones. You don't catch much, just one name. Dilara. You don't slow down or turn, or you just keep walking, tucking that name back into the folds of your mind. Still alive, still being talked about. That in itself is power. You return to the courtyard and find Zainab there, practicing her lute. Her fingers are nimble, her brow furrowed in concentration. When she sees you, she smiles. "You missed lunch," she says. "I was in the scriptorium," you reply, and watch as her expression changes slightly. Not envy, but calculation. She's measuring the weight of your assignments against her own. Everyone does. "That's rare," she says, setting down her instrument. "Was it poetry?" "Religious verse," you say. "Rumi," she laughs gently. "The most dangerous kind." You don't disagree. That evening you're summoned again, this time not alone. A small group of girls is gathered in the perfumery chamber, where a guest from Persia is said to have gifted a new batch of oils and resins. The head perfumer, a tiny woman with a wrist like bird bones and a voice that rarely rises, is particularly pleased. "Rare musk," she whispers. "Amber, frankincense, rosewater distilled through silver." Each of you is assigned a scent to test and blend. You're given ambergris, the most prized of all, the scent worn only by those permitted near the Sultan himself. It smells like salt and shadow, and sunlight left too long on stone. Heavy, haunting. You mix it with the smallest drop of saffron and a touch of clove, then test it on your wrist. The scent blooms slowly, changing with your skin's warmth. When the head perfumer leans over to sniff, she closes her eyes and murmurs, "Yes, this is good. This would linger." She says it like a compliment, but also just like a sentence. Afterward, you return to your room and find a note tucked beneath your cushion. This is rare, almost unheard of. Paper is precious. Privacy is rarer. You unfold it carefully, heart pounding. Inside is just one line, written in elegant, feminine script. The valider sees value in quiet strength. Continue. No name, no seal, just the words. You stare at them for a long time, then fold the note and tuck it deep into your underrobe close to your skin. That night you don't sleep easily, not from fear, but from potential. Something is happening. You're no longer just a name on a scroll or a girl in a silk robe. You're being noticed, tested, shaped. The walls are watching, the validae is watching, and you are learning how to watch back. The next day arrives without warning, as if it had crept in overnight and planted itself there, sticky with late summer heat and too many possibilities. You wake before the call to prayer, heart already beating with that soft, ambient dread that clings to you more days than not now. Being noticed in the harem is a kind of heat too. It warms you, then scorches, then settles in your lungs like smoke. You know it's in the air when no one says your name, but everyone glances twice. You wash quickly in the basin near the dormitory wall, the water cool and biting against your skin. No one speaks this morning, everyone's listening instead, waiting to hear if someone's tray will arrive. It doesn't. Just the usual scroll listing daily tasks and crisp practice calligraphy. Nothing special, nothing overt. You're assigned to the library alcove, a small sunlit corner of the palace where the scrolls are less ceremonial and more informational. Inventories, garden notes, shipping manifests, things that matter to the palace but not to the throne. It's where girls who've made neither enemies nor alliances get sent to vanish. You should be insulted. But you're not, because vanishing in the right moment can be a shield. The library alcove is quiet as always. The The air smells of old paper, beeswax, and ink. You're alone for most of the morning except for a girl named Layla, who arrives late and never meets your eye. You've seen her only a few times. She keeps to herself, whispers her prayers at dusk, and walks like she's trying not to leave footprints. You work in silence, copying names from a spice inventory onto a fresh scroll, organising the entries by weight and origin. Cloves from Zanzibar, saffron from Konya, dried rose petals from Damascus. Each word is its own tiny window into a world you may never see again. Midway through your task, a eunuch appears in the doorway. He doesn't look at you. He simply sets down a small silk pouch tied with gold thread and disappears. You stare at it for a moment, then glance at Layla, who raises her eyebrows but says nothing. You untie the pouch. Inside is a ring, not jewellery. A signet ring, small and plain, with the Valida Sultan's private seal etched into the gold. Not the imperial tukra, the symbol of the Sultan, but the more subtle emblem she uses in correspondence and private ledgers. You've seen it once in a book of old laws. It's unmistakable. There's no note. You tie the pouch shut again and tuck it beneath your sash, saying nothing. Not to Layla, not even to yourself. The next few hours pass like a dream. You finish your inventory scrolls, return the ink pots, and slip the ring into your sleeve like it belongs there. By the time you return to the courtyard, the sun is high and the heat has settled into every corner of the palace like a lazy beast. Girls lounge in the shade, fanning themselves with folded parchment, gossiping softly. No one speaks of Dilara anymore. Her name has floated away, as all names eventually do, except the ones that hemorrhage stay. That evening you join the others in the central salon, where a storyteller from the outer palace has come to perform. He's an old man with silver rings on every finger, and a voice that sounds like gravel rolled in honey. He tells tales of distant sultans, forgotten love affairs, miraculous beasts, and cursed fountains. The girls gather in a semicircle, rapt, as his voice fills the space with colour and motion. You sit near the back, not because you aren't interested, but because you're watching everyone else. The way Zeynep leans forward, wide-eyed, the way Ayla clutches her scarf in excitement, the way one of the senior girls, Farah, a former favourite now fading, barely reacts at all. And then you catch something strange. A glance. Not from the storyteller, or the girls, or the eunuchs stationed at the door. From the balcony above, it's the Valide Sultan. She's watching the room below, her face obscured by the sheer curtain, but you see the outline of her silhouette. She's not listening to the story. She's watching how each girl listens. Who sits closest? Who fakes laughter? Who's genuinely moved? She's conducting a different performance entirely. You wonder if she sees you. No, you know she sees you. Later, as you walk back toward your quarters, the ring heavy in your sleeve, you find the halls emptier than usual. The silence is too perfect, clearly staged. You pass a eunuch you don't recognise. He steps aside and bows slightly. That's new. A few girls loiter near the stairs and fall suddenly quiet as you approach. Also new. In your dormitory you place the pouch beneath your cushion. No one saw. You think, probably. That night Ayla speaks to you just before sleep takes hold. Her voice is small, almost afraid of itself. You've changed, she says. You roll onto your side, facing her in the dim light. Everyone does. No, she insists, still quiet. You used to be like me. You smile, but it's sadder than you mean it to be. I'm still like you. I just have more to remember. A pause, then, do you think being chosen is the only way to escape this? You close your eyes. I don't think there's any escape at all, just different rooms in the same palace. Ayla says nothing after that, just turns over and tucks herself in, her back to you. You lie awake a while longer, staring at the ceiling, remembering the shape of the Valide Sultan behind that curtain. The storyteller said once that every palace has a mirror room where the truth hides in plain sight. Maybe the harem itself is that room. Or maybe you are. And the truth? It's starting to look a lot like you. The next morning arrives like a breath you forgot you were holding. You wake to the sound of bells in the outer garden. Soft and slow, not urgent, but deliberate. Those bells only ring when the palace receives news from the outside world. Not the usual merchant gossip or weather from the provinces, but something bigger. A message from the Grand Vizier, maybe. Or a death. Or a birth. You sit up slowly, brushing the hair from your face. Around you, The dormitory is already stirring, girls blinking away sleep, adjusting robes, stretching beneath linen covers. Even Ayla seems alert today, her dark eyes scanning the doorway like she's waiting for an answer to a question she didn't ask. It takes only an hour for the rumours to bloom. The Sultan's favourite concubine, his current favourite, the one no one talks about directly, the one above even Dilara, has given birth. A son, healthy, screaming apparently, which is considered a very good sign. The news ripples through the harem like dye through water. Everyone responds differently. A few girls cry quietly, not out of sadness, but out of the precise grief that comes when hope shrinks from a possibility to a statistical improbability. Some act unaffected, plucking at embroidery with stiff fingers. Others whisper behind fans and veils, calculating the implications. You go silent. Not out of fear or envy, but because you know what this means. The stakes just changed. Again. The son shifts everything. He won't rule yet. He's still red-faced and toothless, probably wrapped in silk and held by nurses who speak more to him than his own mother will. But one day he could be a prince, a future sultan, which makes her, the concubine who bore him, a new kind of power entirely. You think of her. You've never seen her face, only the trailing ends of her veil once when she passed through the western corridor. But now she holds something you never will, a lineage, and in this world blood is the sharpest tool of all. Still, her life is not enviable. If she's lucky, she'll be moved to the second court and placed under heavy guard. If she's really lucky, she'll live long enough to see her son come of age. If not, well, the palace has always known how to disappear a woman, even one with a royal womb. Your morning duty today is in the embroidery chamber, helping to finish a ceremonial robe meant for the Sultan himself. A new commission, naturally, now that he's a father again. It's an honour, technically, though no one looks thrilled to be there. Even Zeynep seems subdued, stitching in silence beside you. The fabric is heavy, a dark, opulent green lined with golden thread and dotted with symbols meant to ward off illness and envy. You're working on the back panel, carefully embroidering the pattern of tulips and swords that mark this as a garment of joy and strength. It takes all your focus not to stab your fingers. Across the room, an older girl mutters under her breath, "Another prince, that makes 4. A younger girl snorts. 1 dies, 2 are exiled, 1 gets poisoned. That's the pattern. Everyone laughs a little too hard. That's what passes for comfort here. Jokes about dead heirs. At midday you're called to the hamam. Not just you, but a selection of girls, those considered potential. You recognise most of them. Ones who've performed well, ones who've stayed quiet, ones who, like you, have hovered on the edge of visibility long enough to become interesting. The bathhouse is quiet, the steam thick with rose and vetiver. You sit on warm marble, your skin slick and glowing, and try not to look too relaxed. This isn't leisure, it's preparation. A eunuch enters briefly to announce that the Sultan will attend a poetry reading tomorrow night. He's in reflective spirits, whatever that means, and has requested a private gathering. Select concubines will perform. You glance around and already know your name will be on that list. You're not surprised. But you are tired. Not the tired of lack of sleep, but the tired that comes from holding a mask to your face for so long it begins to reshape your bones. After the bath, you're given a fresh robe, and your hair is braided by a younger girl who doesn't speak except to ask how tight you want it. You tell her not to, and she does it anyway. That night before sleep, you reread the note tucked under your cushion. The Valide sees value in quiet strength. Continue. It still hums with something dangerous. Jipes. You don't show it to anyone. You never will. But it feels like a lockpick for a door you're still learning how to find. Later, Ayla comes to you again. She sits on your cushion without asking and whispers, "Do you think she'll live?" "Who?" you ask. "The one who had the baby." You don't answer right away. You think of how many women have died in childbirth in the harem. How many have lived only to be tucked into apartments and never spoken of again? How many were turned into cautionary tales, stripped of names and folded into fables? If she's smart, you say finally, she'll ask for nothing, not even love. Ayla frowns. That's not how it's supposed to be. You smile? It's exactly how it is. She leaves without another word. You lie back and look up at the ceiling, tracing the hand-painted vines and stars you have stared at for so long they feel like part of your own skin. Tomorrow you'll perform for the Sultan. You'll wear a robe stitched by your own hands, your hair still smelling faintly of vetiver and rose. You'll speak words you wrote in secret, now offered in public, and whether he looks at you or through you, something will change. Because now there's a new prince, a new mother, and new eyes watching everything, especially you. The day of the poetry reading unfolds with the eerie quiet of a stage being set. You wake before the dawn call, heart already tapping out the rhythm of nerves you pretend not to feel. Everyone knows what's happening tonight. The Sultan himself will be present, seated among velvet cushions and gold filigree, listening to the women he owns perform like jewelled birds. It's not the first time he's done this, but tonight's different. A new son was born, a new favourite has not been seen, and the harem is spinning. You're not told to attend, you're summoned. The message comes through a eunuch just after morning prayers. He doesn't say much, he doesn't have to. You will read third, he murmurs, after Zainab, before Nur. That's it. No instructions on what to wear, no list of expectations, no advice. That silence is its own message. You've passed the threshold into something higher. Or you've walked into a trap, possibly both. The rest of the day is a haze of soft urgency. You're fitted into a robe from the private wardrobe collection, midnight blue with gold thread curling along the sleeves in the shape of lilies. The attendant tightens your sash with practiced precision, then lets your hair down in waves, weaving a single white flower behind your ear. When you see yourself in the polished bronze mirror, you don't quite recognize the girl looking back. She's too poised, too polished. But beneath the lacquer, your heart still beats like it always has, fast, uncertain, alive. Before the performance, you're sent to a waiting room with 3 other girls. Zainab sits near the window, hands folded tightly in her lap, lips moving as she silently recites her song. Nur chews her lower lip and stares at the door like she's calculating escape routes. You sit still, not out of calm, but because you're saving every ounce of energy for what's coming next. When a eunuch enters and calls Zainab's name, no one speaks. She rises like a blade being drawn and disappears through the carved wooden doors. You close your eyes and try to ground yourself. You imagine your village, the way the air used to smell of river and firewood, the sound of your mother's voice calling you in for supper. That world feels impossibly far away now, like a story someone else once told you. But the memory steadies you, as much as it hurts. A few minutes later, the eunuch returns. You're next. The walk to the performance chamber feels longer than it is. You pass walls that glitter with tile mosaics, archways inlaid with lapis and ivory. Oil lamps cast soft golden pools on the floor. Everything is too quiet. Every step is a prayer, every breath an offering. Then the doors open. The chamber is intimate, smaller than you imagined. The Sultan sits reclined on a dais beneath a domed ceiling painted with constellations. He's surrounded by pillows, guards, and shadows. His face is unreadable, smooth, pale, distant. Beside him sits the Valide Sultan, her veil lowered just enough to show her mouth, which is neither smiling nor frowning, just waiting. The other guests are few, high-ranking officials, trusted eunuchs, a visiting Sufi scholar, perhaps. They sit in silence, their eyes dull with expectation. You step forward and bow low, your forehead almost touching the polished floor. When you rise, your voice is clear, trained, just loud enough to carry. You begin your poem, not rushed, not theatrical, but with the quiet conviction of someone who no longer needs to pretend she belongs here. It's a piece you wrote weeks ago, before you were ever summoned, when you still believed you might vanish at any moment. It speaks of distance, of longing sharpened into elegance. It weaves in metaphors of ships leaving harbours, of letters burned before they could be read. The room listens. The Sultan doesn't move. He doesn't smile. He doesn't blink as far as you can tell. But his attention is complete. You feel it like heat on your skin. Whether it's fascination or assessment, you can't say. When you finish, there is no applause, just silence. And then, a nod from the Valide Sultan. That's it. Your offering is accepted. You bow once more and step back, floating on a current of adrenaline and something heavier. Relief, maybe, or the dull realization that being seen is not the same as being chosen. It's just one more step on a staircase with no railings. You return to the waiting room where Nur barely meets your eye before being called forward. Zainab is gone. No one explains where. That's the way of it. Later that night, after the reading has concluded and the doors have been sealed, you return to your chamber in silence. No one greets you, no one asks how it went, but someone has left a plate of sugared almonds on your cushion. A token, a gesture. From whom you can't guess. You eat one, savouring the sweetness, the crunch. For just a moment it's enough. A few hours pass before the atmosphere shifts again. Footsteps in the corridor, soft, deliberate. The eunuch appears. He says only your name. And suddenly the room goes still. Girls stop talking, eyes follow you. Even Ayla stares with something like fear, or is it hope? You can't tell anymore. You stand, you smooth your robe, and you walk forward, heart pounding so hard you're surprised no one can hear it echo through the tiles. You are being summoned. I've been asked to write, you say. She pauses. Then you're more dangerous than we thought. You glance sideways, and you're still not afraid to walk beside me. She grins. I've always liked living on the edge. That night there is no invitation, no footsteps, just the hollow quiet of a world that keeps spinning without acknowledgement. You sit at the table in your chamber, open the journal, and write again. But this time it's not poetry, it's memory. You write about your first day in the harem, about the steam of the hamam clinging to your skin, about the soft, suspicious glances passed between girls. You write about your language lessons, where every word had to be memorized not just for meaning but for tone, how to sound obedient without sounding stupid. You write about the first time you saw the valide Sultan from a distance and thought, that woman could end empires just by closing her fist. You write it all. You pause only once midway through a sentence about the Sultan when the candlelight flickers. Not from wind, from breath. There's someone in the room. You turn your head slowly, and there in the shadows near the door is a eunuch, one of the senior ones, draped in black silk, his eyes impossible to read. Message, he says simply. You rise and bow. He steps forward and places a scroll on your desk, then vanishes without another word. You unroll it. Inside are only 5 words. He will call you soon. No signature, no seal, no flourish, just a statement. Your fingers tighten around the parchment. You close the journal. The page remains unfinished. Not because you've run out of things to say, but because the next chapter hasn't happened yet. And it's already being written. The message haunts you, not in the way a threat does, sharp and immediate, but like the far-off roll of thunder that suggests something large is moving toward you. He will call you soon. Soon. Not now, not tonight, just soon. That one word wraps itself around your ribs and stays there, pulsing like a second heartbeat. It's a promise, or a warning, or both, which is usually the case in the harem. You wake early the next morning, your journal still resting on the desk, the unfinished sentence hanging in the air like smoke. You don't pick up the pen again. Not yet. Today doesn't feel like a day for poetry. It feels like a day for preparation. There's no tray, no summons, no silk robe delivered in your size. But you're not surprised. Soon was the word, and in palace time, that could mean tonight, or next week, or just long enough for the walls to tighten their grip around you. The valide's words ring louder now. Do not confuse being read with being understood. After the morning prayers, a eunuch arrives at your chamber, not with news of the Sultan, but with something stranger. A task. You're to visit the midwives' wing. The order is signed, sealed, and bearing the Valide Sultan's unmistakable mark. You don't question it. You just change your robe, something pale and unassuming, and follow the eunuch through a series of corridors you've never walked before. The midwives' wing is hushed and humid. The air smells of lavender, boiled linen, and something coppery is here that's hard to name. You're greeted by a short, brisk woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a cleaner's apron stained faintly red at the sleeves. She doesn't bow, she simply gestures. You'll assist, she says. You blink. With what? She hands you a tray of herbal tools, pestles, jars, rolled linen, tiny bottles of thick oils. We're preparing the birth quarters for inspection. The Valide wants it spotless. Now that there's a new heir, everything must gleam. So, it's about her, the mother of the newborn prince. The woman no one has seen since her labour. She must still be in confinement somewhere behind a veil of velvet and precaution. You won't be seeing her. But her shadow stretches long. You help for hours, scrubbing floors, dusting the carved beams, repacking gauze into brass containers. No one here treats you like royalty, not even like a concubine of note. You're just another pair of hands. And strangely, that feels good. Honest. The blood, the heat, the labour. This is real in a way that poetry never is. Life happens here. So does death. No one flinches at either. At one point you're asked to carry a sealed bundle of herbs to a room at the far end of the wing. You walk slowly, the bundle warm in your hands. When you arrive, a door opens before you can knock. And there, just for a flash, you see her. The Sultan's consort. She is seated on a cushion, pale and sweating, a nurse wiping her forehead with rosewater. Her eyes, huge and glassy, lock with yours. Neither of you speak. Then the door closes again. You don't tell anyone. You return the tray. You wash your hands. You leave the midwife's wing and walk back to your chamber with a strange heaviness in your limbs. That night you write only a single line in your journal. Even gold bends when held too tightly. The following days are slow but charged. You are watched constantly now by the Valide's women, by the tutors, even by girls who used to speak freely to you. Zeynep avoids you altogether. Ayla offers you one of her oranges at lunch and doesn't say a word when you refuse it. You've passed some invisible threshold, and now you exist on the other side of a line no one else dares to cross. When the summons finally comes, it's wordless. A eunuch appears at dusk with a pale green robe and a thin silver sash. He doesn't speak. He just lays the robe across your bed and bows once. You dress slowly. This one is different from the others. The silk is whisper light, the embroidery subtle. There's nothing seductive about it, and yet you know this isn't meant to charm. It's meant to signal. This is not a night of lust, this is a night of consequences. The walk to the Sultan's chamber feels longer this time, not because of the distance, but because of the weight in your chest. You are not the same girl who walked this path before. You have seen too much, you have written too much, you have remembered too much. When you enter, the Sultan is already standing. Not lounging, not smiling. Standing. He nods once, motions for the attendants to leave, and gestures to a chair by the fire. "You've been busy," he says without looking at you. You sit quietly. "So have you." That earns you a glance, then a smirk. "They say you've been writing." "I have." "About me?" "Not yet." He chuckles. "Smart." He pours you a cup of spiced tea, hands it to you himself. You take it with both hands, sip, cinnamon, cloves, cardamom, then silence. He finally speaks again. "You're not the prettiest." You don't flinch. "No." "You're not the youngest." "No." "But you're the most aware." You incline your head. "That's what I'm told." He studies you for a long time, then says, "What do you want?" The question slices the air in half. No one in the harem gets asked that. What do you want? Girls dream of hearing it, fear it. You've asked it of yourself in the dark and never dared to answer. And now you do. To survive. The Sultan nods slowly. A better answer than to be loved. Love has rules, you say. Survival rewrites them. Another long pause, then he reaches into his robe and places something on the table between you. A ring, not the imperial seal, but close. "This means favour," he says. You don't touch it. "And cost?" you ask. He lifts his eyes. "Nothing is free, not even safety." You stare at the ring, then him, then the fire, and you begin to understand. This is not seduction, this is succession. He may not love you, but he may use you. And in the harem, sometimes being used is safer than being desired. That night you lie beside him, not as a girl chasing favour, but as a woman holding the pen. Tomorrow you'll decide what kind of story this becomes, and who gets to read it. By dawn, the ring is gone from the table, and so is the Sultan. He rises early, summoned by matters of empire, wars far away, taxes, unrest in the Janissary Corps, or some minister needing his ear. Whatever the reason, you are left in his bed alone, limbs tangled in silk, the scent of cinnamon still on your fingers. The fire has gone out. The room is cool, quiet. You stare up at the ceiling for a long time, counting the carved stars. You know each one by now. You slip from the bed and dress without assistance. The attendants usually wait just outside the chamber, but this morning no one rushes in. You tie your own sash, you smooth your own hair, you leave the way you came, silent, unseen, walking barefoot across polished stone floors that still echo with everything that happened, and everything that didn't. But when you return to your chamber, something is different. Your journal is gone. You freeze, fingers still on the edge of the door, heart stuttering in your chest. The desk is empty, the ink pot untouched. The lacquered box open, its contents stripped bare. For a full breath your mind spins with panic. Who took it? Why? How long ago? But panic never serves you. You shut the door behind you, sit down and breathe. There's a note in its place, a single line. Some truths must remain unwritten. No signature, but the handwriting is unmistakable. It's the Valide Sultan's. You're not sure if it's a warning or a gift, probably both. It always is. The loss burns more than you expect. That journal was your mirror, your map, your quiet defiance. To have it taken, no matter how carefully, how badly, is a reminder that nothing in this world belongs to you. Not even your own thoughts, not even your own story. That afternoon you're assigned to the Imperial Gardens, not for punishment, for display. You and 2 other concubines are to walk the northern terrace where foreign envoys sometimes gather, where the Sultan occasionally strolls to remind the Empire of his many possessions, including the beautiful silent ones. You're dressed in green, the colour of renewal. Or envy, hard to say which. You wear a veil just sheer enough to suggest mystery and just opaque enough to deny intimacy. Your shoes are soft-soled, your jewellery minimal. The sun glints off your cheekbone as you walk between rows of orange trees and blue hyacinths. Servants rake the gravel behind you, erasing your footprints as you go. The other 2 girls speak softly to one another. One is new, barely trained, her laugh too high, too eager. The other is older, sharper, her every word edged with unspoken warnings. You don't speak, you just walk back straight, gaze low. You are here to be seen, not to see. To be imagined, not known. Near the end of the terrace, a eunuch approaches and whispers something to the senior girl. Her eyes widen, then narrow. She glances at you, not with friendliness, not with hate, with calculation. You've seen that look before. You're no longer the girl who entered the harem full of wonder and fear. You've become something else. Not a favourite, not a mother, not a prisoner. Something more dangerous than all 3. A contender. That evening, a story spreads through the harem like scented smoke. Quiet, but unmistakable. Another concubine has vanished. No tray, no scream, no warning, just gone. Her name was Mahri. She was clever. Too clever. Some say she tried to influence a guard. Others whisper she sent a letter outside the palace. A few believe she was caught reading a book she wasn't supposed to understand. You knew her only a little. She once corrected your grammar during poetry lessons. She is now erased. In the harem, no one dies publicly. There are no funerals, no mourning veils, just quiet removals. A cushion left unfilled, a robe folded and placed back in the inventory. But her disappearance is a message. To you, to all of you. Be useful or be forgotten. That night you don't write, you can't. Instead you sit by the window in your private chamber, looking through the lattice at the night sky beyond the palace. You imagine stars that aren't shaped into ceilings, rivers that don't stop at garden walls, air that doesn't smell like rosewater and rules. And then you hear it. A faint knock. Not a eunuch, not a messenger, not expected. You open the door, it's Halime. She stands there without her cane, without her veil, just her eyes and the exhaustion behind them. They took your journal, she says, no preamble. You nod. She steps inside and closes the door behind her. Then she reaches into the folds of her robe and pulls out another book, smaller, older, leather-bound and worn at the edges. I kept this, she says, since I was your age. You stare. Use it, she says, but keep it better hidden than you did the last one. You take it, hands trembling. The leather is warm somehow, as if it remembers things. I thought they destroyed it, you whisper. They never destroy things, she says. They just move them, rearrange the story. She turns to leave, then pauses at the door. Mahri wrote too. She didn't hide it well enough. She believed the right words could protect her. You ask, and can they? Halim's eyes harden. No, she says, but the right words in the right hands can wound. You're alone again. You open the little leather journal, the first page is blank. You dip your pen into ink. And this time you don't write poetry, you write names, dates, quotes. You write what they don't want remembered. And you vow that if you ever vanish, your words will stay, like perfume in the air, like fingerprints on silk, like ash that will not blow away. Morning breaks like a bruise, slow, dull, tender to the touch. You wake with the new journal clutched to your chest, the leather warm against your skin, your fingers stiff from gripping it in your sleep. It's still here, still real, not a dream conjured by your desperation for control. You hide it more carefully this time, wedged beneath a loose tile behind the inkstand, layered beneath blank parchment and a decoy scroll written in intentionally clumsy script. You smooth your robe and sit quietly on the edge of your cushion, the early call to prayer echoing through the stone walls like a heartbeat. There is no summons from the Sultan today, no cryptic message, no note. You're not surprised. He doesn't need to see you every night for you to remain in orbit. You've reached a place in the palace hierarchy that is invisible but deeply felt. The favoured, the potentially useful, the watched. And being watched is more dangerous than being ignored. You're assigned, oddly, to the prayer chamber this morning, a rare request for a concubine, especially one in your current position. Usually, this task goes to those with spotless records and quiet mouths, but the Valide Sultan moves pieces no one else sees, and you know enough now not to question strange placements, only to learn from them. The chamber is small and perfectly symmetrical, with calligraphy twining across the walls in cobalt script. You kneel on a fresh rug scented faintly of frankincense, surrounded by light filtering through stained glass. You're meant to clean, dust the carved mihrab, refill the oil lamps, straighten the Qurans resting on their cradles. But it's not cleaning that's being measured today, it's your piety. You feel it as soon as the steward arrives, her eyes hidden beneath her veil but her presence unmistakable. She watches from the doorway as you dust gently, your fingers careful on each holy text, your movements reverent but not theatrical. You've learned. Theatrics invite suspicion, stillness invites trust. When she leaves without a word, you exhale and sit quietly for a few moments longer, letting your body settle. You press your palms against the cool tile floor and whisper a quiet prayer. Not for power, not for love, just for clarity. Later, after the midday meal, you're summoned again, this time not alone. A group of concubines, including you, is chosen to assist with preparing ceremonial garments for an upcoming imperial inspection. It's the kind of task that seems menial, but the implications are always larger than the embroidery hoop. You're given a robe to stitch, deep crimson with gold edging, the fabric stiff and warm to the touch. The girl seated next to you is Layla, quiet and quick-fingered. Her head bowed low. "They say the Janissaries are angry," she whispers, her voice barely audible. You glance sideways. "Why?" "Too many concubines," she says. "Too many sons, too many mothers behind curtains." You nod slowly. You've heard this before. The Empire's military elite, the Janissaries, tolerate the harem as long as it stays decorative. The moment it begins to steer the Empire from behind the veil, things get tense. "And what happens," you ask her, "when the curtain opens?" She doesn't answer. She just keeps stitching. That night the Sultan does not call for you, but the Valida Sultan does. You're brought to her chamber after dinner. The scent of her space always strikes you first, oud myrrh, something bitter like dried orange peel. She sits high again, veiled, flanked by attendants who hover like loyal shadows. "I've heard," she says. "You've begun writing again." You freeze, then bow low. "Only observations, Valide Sultan." "No woman in this palace writes only observations," she says. "But I admire restraint. It's a skill more powerful than seduction." You wait. She leans forward slightly. The time is coming when decisions will need to be made. Loyalties claimed, sides taken. You're clever enough to see that. You nod. "Yes, Valide Sultan." She gestures with her fingers. "Good. Then let me ask you plainly. Do you believe the Sultan's newest son will survive?" The question cuts like cold steel. "I don't know," you say honestly. She watches you for a beat. "Neither do I. But I know this. Mothers don't survive unless their sons do." You nod. "I've seen it." "Then understand this," she says, voice quieter now. "You may never bear a son, but you can still survive, if you choose wisely." You leave her chamber trembling, not from fear but from the clarity of it. You're not the mother of a prince, you never may be, but you have knowledge, witness, memory. And in a palace that forgets its women, memory is power. Back in your room, you unearth the hidden journal and write by candlelight. You document everything, the Valide's question, the prayer chamber assignment, the whispers from Layla, the tension in the robes you stitched. You mark every name, every glance, every shift. You write in metaphor, in symbols, in coded lines only you understand. Not to hide, but to protect. You write, "A storm gathers where the gold is stored. A mother weeps behind veils. A soldier sharpens his blade, and beneath that, they think they see everything, but they have forgotten the girl in the corner with the ink-stained hands." You close the journal and return it to its hiding place. Then you lie back on your cushion and stare at the ceiling, letting the knowledge settle into your bones. You will not be the Sultan's favourite. You will not be his wife. You may never be his anything again. But you are something else now. An archive, a mirror, a blade in velvet. And when the empire begins to crack, as it always does, it will not be the loudest voices who decide its shape. It will be the ones who remember. There's something different in the air the next morning. Not the temperature or the scent, but something intangible. The harem breathes more shallowly, as if every corridor, every tiled hall is waiting for someone to speak a truth too large to swallow. You sense it before you even open your eyes. And when you do, when the morning light slices through the shutters and lands on your floor in perfect golden lines, the message is already waiting. It comes not on parchment, not by eunuch, not with fanfare, but slipped beneath your door on a folded scrap of cotton cloth, the kind used to swaddle babies, unmistakable. Inside, a single line stitched in careful black thread. He is ill. No name, no signature, but it doesn't need one. You know immediately who he is, the Sultan's son, the newborn, the future, the heartbeat the harem had begun to orbit around. You read the words twice, and then a third time, your hands trembling, even as your mind remains clear. You fold the cloth again, carefully, and slip it into your journal. The entire morning moves like smoke. You attend your duties. Today it's garden assistance, pruning pomegranate trees with gloves too large and a blade too dull. But your mind is elsewhere. The others gossip about new robes, about who was called to dance practice, about the servant caught stealing rose oil from the valide's storage room. But you're silent, because you know what's coming next. A sick heir means danger, not just to him, to everyone, especially the mother. In the harem there is no room for failed gods. A woman who cannot keep her son alive, even if it's no fault of her own, becomes a liability, and liabilities are removed. Quietly, elegantly, as if they were never here at all. By midday the atmosphere thickens. The valid Sultan doesn't appear for her usual procession. The chief steward cancels music rehearsals. Several of the younger girls are told to remain in their chambers. You're not given instructions, which is itself a message. You're free to move, which means they still trust you, or they're still deciding how dangerous you really are. You walk the inner garden paths alone, the scent of lemon blossoms clinging to the air. At the edge of the marble pool you spot her, the mother, not officially named, not publicly celebrated, but real, frail, seated on a cushion beneath the shade of a fig tree, surrounded by silence. She's thinner than you remember, paler. Her eyes are fixed on the reflection in the water. You can tell she doesn't hear the birdsong or feel the breeze brushing her veil. She's elsewhere, somewhere dark and echoing where the sound of her child's shallow breathing lives. You approach slowly, quietly, offering no greeting. You don't sit beside her, but near enough for your presence to register. She speaks first. "They've stopped calling him my son, they just say the boy." Her voice is flat, not bitter, not afraid, just exhausted. You don't answer. There's nothing safe to say. "I haven't held him in 2 days," she continues. "They tell me rest is important. For who, I wonder?" Still you remain silent. You keep your hands in your lap. You don't look at her directly. In the harem, shared pain is dangerous. It builds connections too quickly. And attachments are vulnerabilities sharpened to a point. Finally, she says, "I heard you hui, right?" You blink, unsure whether it's an accusation or an invitation. "I remember words," you say quietly, when no one else wants to. She turns her head slowly, her eyes meeting yours for the first time. "If I disappear," she says, "will you remember me with dignity?" You don't hesitate. "Yes." Her mouth curves, not a smile exactly, more like a sigh that's settled in her lips, and then she turns back to the water. You leave her there under the fig tree, wondering whether she'll see another dusk. Back in your chamber, you retrieve your journal. You write down everything, her words, her posture, the unspoken request in her gaze. You don't give her name, You call her the woman who loved without being allowed to mourn. You draw no conclusions, only questions. That evening, a new silence falls over the harem. It's different this time, thicker, colder. It creeps into every conversation, stifles every laugh. The girls begin to whisper about a doctor being called from the outer court, about the Valde meeting with the Sultan alone, about the baby's wet nurse being sent away. One rumour chokes another before it can settle. You eat alone in your chamber, pushing pieces of roasted plum across a silver plate, appetite buried under the weight of implication. No tray arrives, no summonsons, just you. The candle, the journal, and then, just as the lamps are being extinguished in the corridor, a knock, not firm, not ceremonial, a soft, hesitant knock. You open the door to find Ayla standing there, barefoot, eyes wide. "They took her," she whispers. You don't need to ask who. "She didn't scream," Ayla continues. "She just walked." You say nothing. Just reach out, and this time Ayla lets you pull her inside. She curls on your cushion like a child, and you sit beside her in silence. When she finally falls asleep, you light a candle and pick up your pen. You write. The curtain closes without applause. The heroine exits without lines. We forget not because we want to, but because forgetting keeps us safe. And beneath that, she asked me to remember her with dignity, so I will. You pause, then draw a small, careful crescent moon in the margin. Your own mark, subtle but permanent. And then you blow out the candle. The night wraps around you like a question waiting for an answer. And you already know that in the harem, every answer costs something. The next morning is quiet, too quiet, the kind of hush that doesn't settle, but clings. It's as if the entire palace is afraid to breathe too deeply. You wake to the sound of footsteps muffled by thick rugs, the gentle creak of a door somewhere nearby, and the distant weep of a fountain. No birds, no laughter, no music echoing off the tilework of the courtyard. You already know what that means. The child is dead. You don't need anyone to say it. The stillness says it for them. The harem, which usually pulses with the hidden rhythm of female life, whispers, grooming, silk rustles, and shared secrets, now lies frozen into place. You sit up slowly, your breath shallow in your throat. The cushion beside you is empty. Ayla must have slipped out before dawn. You half expect to find another note, another sign stitched in fabric or whispered through walls, but this time there's nothing. Nothing is more terrifying than nothing. You dress simply. A pale grey robe with no embroidery, no pattern, just cloth. It's a mourning colour, but unofficial. You don't know if you're meant to grieve, no one will say so. You weren't his mother, you weren't his nurse, and you weren't even called to hold him once, but you remember him. And in the harem, sometimes memory is the only act of resistance left. Your first duty is cancelled. No lessons today, no readings, not even embroidery. Instead, you're summoned, along with a dozen other girls, to the washing chambers, where the linen drapes are being pulled down and stripped, a symbolic cleansing. It happens every time someone dies, especially someone of note, a concubine, a prince, an important eunuch. The act of laundering cloth becomes the act of laundering memory. The air inside the chambers smells of vinegar and boiled water. Basins of soap line the marble floors. The older concubines stand off to the side, supervising silently. They've done this before. You can tell by the way their hands move without hesitation, and the way their eyes avoid yours. You scrub without speaking. The fabric in your hands is damp, heavy, stained with nothing you can see, but plenty you can feel. You think about the woman beneath the fig tree, the boy's mother. You don't know where she is now. No one has spoken her name since yesterday. Later you hear someone whisper that she's been sent to the old palace, the place where they put forgotten women, former favourites, disgraced mothers, dowagers too dangerous to keep near power. It's not death, but it might as well be. Exile, someone mutters under her breath, but dressed up in velvet. In the afternoon, the valid sultan calls a closed assembly, not of the entire harem, just the ones who matter. And somehow you're among them now. You gather in her private hall, seated in a semicircle on no cushions. She arrives draped in black, her veil heavy with jet bead embroidery. Her voice, when she speaks, is clear and unshaken. "Tragedy tests us," she begins, "but so does opportunity." No one breathes. She continues. The line of succession remains strong, the sultan has sons, but weakness invites ambition. That lands like a stone in your chest. She's not talking about grief, she's talking about power. The way it contracts in times of mourning. The way rivals circle like hawks the moment a prince falls. We will not let this palace become a nest of vultures, she says. You're here because you have use. Keep it. Then, as if it were a footnote, there will be no formal mourning. It invites sympathy. Sympathy is a form of rot. You're dismissed shortly after. No one speaks as you leave the hall. No one dares. You spend the rest of the day in your chamber, the light shifting across your floor with agonizing slowness. You open your journal. You try to write, but the words come thick and uneven, like smoke from a fire too damp to burn. You write, he died before his name was etched in tile, before he touched water that wasn't warmed for him, before the harem could decide if it loved or feared him. You close the journal again, you feel hollow, not broken, just scraped clean. When dusk falls, a eunuch arrives at your door. This time there's no tray, just a scroll. It's a decree, not official, not public, just private enough to be dangerous. Inside is a list of assignments. Your name is next to a title, Record Keeper, Private Harem Ledger. You blink. This is more than a journal. This is a job. A place within the Valade's information network. You've been watching, writing, surviving. Now you're being invited to do it on purpose and to record what happens, what doesn't, what should be remembered and what should be erased. You are not asked whether you accept. The next morning you report to the record chamber, tucked behind the eastern wing. It's small, lined with scrolls and sealed books, some written in Persian, some in Arabic, a few in Greek. The eunuch who guards the door says nothing as you enter. Inside, an older woman waits. You've seen her before, though rarely. She keeps the ledgers of the palace, the numbers, the rosters, the histories that never get read aloud. She gestures to a stool beside her. You will begin here, she says. You'll observe, you'll write, and you'll forget your opinions. You don't respond, you just nod. But you know the truth. Your opinions are what got you here. That night, back in your chamber, you open your personal journal and begin again. Today, I became a scribe. Tomorrow I might become something else. But I will not become forgotten. You don't realise how small the outside world has become until you see it framed through a lattice. One afternoon, just past the prayer hour, you're sent on a routine errand. A simple delivery of correspondence from the record keeper's archive to the palace's inner court scribe. It's nothing dramatic. No secrets, no urgent messages, just lists, numbers, the quiet machinery that keeps the empire's silken pulse beating. But the walk takes you along a high corridor lined with narrow arched windows, each one covered with an intricate wooden screen, designed to let in light and air. Never freedom. You pause at one of them. Beyond it, the city sprawls, not in full view, just a glimpse. A slice of rooftops, minarets, gulls circling above domes, the faintest hum of Istanbul in the afternoon. Merchants calling out prices, the clink of glass teacups, the low rumble of wheels on stone. Life. Actual life. Not the curated stillness of the harem, where every sound is approved, rehearsed, or punished. This is raw, unfiltered. You press your forehead to the wooden screen, not caring that it leaves marks on your skin. There's a ferry down on the Bosphorus, small and ragged compared to the gilded palace boats. You watch as people board, men in turbans, women carrying baskets, a boy with a dog that looks half wolf. They look tired, real. They're going somewhere, coming from somewhere. No one watches them walk, no one charts their movements, no one records their failures in ledgers sealed with wax. You feel it then, a longing so deep it twists through your ribs. You almost gasp. It's not freedom you crave, it's anonymity. The ability to exist without consequence, without the weight of being observed and assessed every time you breathe. To be invisible in the world, not encased like a treasure under glass. But the moment doesn't last. The eunuch escorting you clears his throat. Soft, but sharp enough to pull you back. You continue walking. Later that night, you try to draw what you saw, the outline of the city, the curve of the rooftops, the shape of the ferry as it pulled away from shore. Your sketch is shaky, childlike, but it's yours. You tuck it into your journal beside a new page of writing. Beyond the veil lies noise, mess, realness. We are curated silence. We are curated women. The next day, the lessons resume. Not for you, you've advanced past the daily rotations of poetry, embroidery, and court etiquette. but you're assigned to observe, to listen. The valide wants reports not only of numbers and names now, but of tone. Who says what? Who speaks too quickly? Who hesitates? Who hesitates twice? Your report is not official, but it might as well be scripture. Every week your notes are taken by a steward who offers no reaction, just a nod. You begin to realise something troubling. The girls around you no longer look at you like a peer. You're becoming something else. A hinge, a watcher, maybe even a threat. Ayla still visits you at night sometimes, but not as often. When she does, she sits quietly, plucking at her sleeve, saying little. She's afraid. Not of you, but of the silence around you. Of what it means to grow close to someone with access. She hasn't said it loud, but you can feel it. You've crossed a line she can't follow. One evening she finally whispers, "Do you ever think about leaving?" You don't answer right away. Then, "No one leaves the harem." She frowns. "They do, the ones who marry, the ones who bear sons." You shake your head. "They don't leave. They just get reassigned." It's a long pause. "What if I wanted to try?" You stare at her. She means it, and worse, she's begun to believe it might be possible. You take her hand gently. This place is a maze that changes every time you learn the path. It doesn't want you to escape. It wants you to adapt. She nods, but her eyes remain far away. A week later, she's reassigned to the music wing. You're not surprised. You're not told why. You just return to your empty chamber that night and stare at the cushion where she used to sit. You begin to write, but the ink bleeds too quickly from your pen. You tear the page out and burn it. You're starting to understand something you didn't before. This palace, this city within a city, is not just a structure of stone and tile. It's an organism, a breathing thing, every room a lung, every servant a blood cell, every woman a nerve ending. And the harem is its mind, a mind that remembers, that rewrites, that adjusts itself constantly to survive. You can't run from it because it is you, but even so the image of the city, just beyond the lattice, haunts you. You see it in your dreams, streets without guards, market stalls, clouds that don't look like carved marble swirls on a ceiling. A woman walking alone, her veil half loose, her steps uncounted. Sometimes the woman is you, sometimes she's someone else, but always, always, she's free. You write again. Freedom is not the absence of walls, it is the ability to forget you are inside them. And below that, one day, I will walk through that door and no one will follow. One day I will leave behind not just the harem, but the version of myself it taught me to be. The journal closes with a soft snap. Outside, a call to prayer echoes across the city, and this time you answer, not with words, but with a wish. The wind changes before the rumours do. That's how you know something is about to happen. It blows in from the north, cooler than usual, curling around the minarets and rushing through the palace arches like a messenger too hurried to stop. The harem feels it too. Curtains sway in rooms with no open windows. Candle flames lean in strange directions. Servants mutter about omens. You sit with your hands in your lap, the unfinished edge of your current task, a hem on a ceremonial robe, draped across your knees. You stitch in silence, but every loop of thread feels like a heartbeat. By afternoon, the whispers begin. The Sultan is ill. It's said quietly at first, a headache, nothing serious. Fatigue from late nights, stress from a foreign envoy's failed tribute. But you've been in the palace too long not to recognise the structure of a lie when it's built so quickly. You've seen what happens when a truth is too dangerous to speak aloud. It gets wrapped in layers of politeness, until no one can breathe around it. But that evening the music doesn't play. That's how you know it's real. No strings in the courtyard, no harpists rehearsing beneath the garden trellises, just a long, deep silence. You feel it pressing against your skin like damp fabric. The Sultan hasn't summoned anyone in 3 nights, not you, not his inner circle, not even the Valide Sultan publicly. His favourite food trays are returned untouched. His private physician has not left his wing in 2 days. You pass the halls where he used to walk and feel the air change. Cooler, stiller, like a room holding its breath. You don't sleep. You lie on your cushion, eyes open, the journal clutched against your chest. You don't write. You just listen. Every sound matters now. Every whisper could be the beginning of your next life, or the end of your current one. When the knock comes, it's after midnight. A eunuch in black, no lantern, no tray, just a message. The valide requests your presence. You dress quickly in silence, pulling on a robe that still smells faintly of rose and ink. You follow the eunuch through side passages and hidden doors, the parts of the palace reserved for women who matter. The ones who are more than ornament. The ones who are, in some way, dangerous. The valid Sultan is seated upright in her private salon, dressed in deep violet, her veil thick and stiff with pearls. She looks like a statue carved by authority itself. You bow low, and when she speaks, her voice is dry but sharp. "You are not here because you are favoured," she says. "You are here because you remember." You raise your eyes, uncertain. "What do you want me to remember?" She doesn't answer at first. She gestures instead to a servant, who enters carrying a sealed scroll and a thick leather-bound book. Both are placed on the table beside her. "When a sultan dies," she says, "there are two stories that must be written, the public one and the true one." The words crash through you like cold water. "So it's true," you whisper. "He's dying." She nods once. "He is not yet gone, but the end has begun." You swallow, hard. She leans forward. "When he dies, there will be chaos. The princes will be summoned, the concubines reshuffled, some will be sent away, others removed. And I," she pauses, "I will be a shadow of what I was." You want to ask what that makes you, but you already know. "You will write," she continues. "Not poetry, not gossip, history." You hesitate? "The truth." She almost smiles. "As close to it as we are permitted." And the scroll contains a directive, your new post effective immediately. Private chronicler to the Harem Council. It isn't a title made for ceremony. It's not meant to be read aloud, it's meant to serve and to protect. You sign your name, your real name, the one few people in this palace have ever used. She watches you finish, then places a small ring in front of you, silver etched with a pomegranate. "This will grant you access," she says, "to chambers, to conversations, to her knowledge." You pick it up slowly. "And the cost?" you ask. She lifts her eyes. "You will never again be invisible." When you return to your chamber, the journal is waiting for you like an old friend. You open it, hand steady, and begin to write. He is dying. He who once moved like a god now breathes like a prisoner. The empire listens for the silence between his breaths. You write until the candle burns low, and the ink stains the edge of your sleeve. You record everything you've seen, his moods in the final weeks, the way his guards shift uncomfortably in their posts, the foreign ministers suddenly becoming more generous, more eager to please. You note the timing of the physician's visits, the frequency of the valide's private summons, the rise of one particular steward whose name is suddenly on every scroll. You do not write fear, but it's there, in the margins. The next day, the palace erupts into carefully coordinated movement. Curtains are changed to more somber tones. A ceremonial robe is retrieved and aired, one used only during imperial transitions. The Janissary's commander arrives at the palace with no formal summons. You see him through a crack in a marble screen, his face tense. You are invisible no longer. As the sun sets, you look out again through one of the palace's screened windows. This time the city feels further away. You wonder if they can feel it too, the moment an empire shifts just beneath their feet. You press your hand to the lattice, and you vow, when they forget this, when it's cleaned and polished and told like a fairy tale, you will still remember the truth. Because now you are the truth. You are the record. The day the Sultan dies, the sky stays the same. That's the first strange thing. You expect thunder, a crow, something, anything to mark the shift, but it's just heat and haze, and the low drone of cicadas humming across the garden walls. You've seen death wrapped in silence before, but this is different. This is the end of a shadow that's stretched across your entire world. And the world doesn't blink. Word comes not with fanfare, but with stillness. You're in the record chamber. Your pen halfway through transcribing an inventory of velvet bolts when the senior scribe enters. She says nothing, just places a small vial of black ink on your table and nods. It's an old code, used only when names are about to be written in finality. You sit for a moment. Your heart doesn't race, and you thought it might, but instead you feel the opposite. Stissel so deep it borders on numbness. And then you open a new page in the ledger. Date. Time. and the first line of "The Sultan, shadow of God on earth, has returned to the Creator." The formality feels like a lie, but it's the language you've been taught to use. You write the rest quickly, names of those informed, names of those summoned, and which seal was used to close the inner chamber doors. Then you return to your private journal, not the official record, yours. He is gone, and yet the air still holds his shape. It will for a while. Even the walls remember the weight of a ruler. By noon, the entire harem is in lockdown. The outer gates are closed, guards posted in double rotation. No one enters, no one leaves. The valid Sultan takes full control, her title now something different, heavier, wrapped in mourning. The crown of motherhood stripped down to cold influence. And you move between rooms like a thread, tying memory to action. You are summoned to witness the binding of personal effects, the Sultan's robes, his calligraphy tools, the ring he wore only during battle councils. Each item is placed in lacquered boxes, sealed in wax, and labelled in your careful hand. The head steward reads over your shoulder, but says nothing. Your handwriting is trusted now, your lines considered as final as stone. Later, you're taken to the chamber where the Sultan's body lies, shrouded in white. Not for grief, for inventory. You're to observe the ritual washing. You do not touch, you are not holy enough, but you are allowed to watch, to remember. You count each step of the ritual in your head. 7 washes, 1 final wrapping, and the placement of a single rose petal on his chest. He looks smaller than you remember. Less divine. More man. You write, even gods shrink, in death. The next days blur, the princes arrive, and with them possibility and danger. Each one comes with his own entourage, his own mother, or the memory of her. The walls thrum with politics too loud to ignore. You're ordered to attend only select meetings. You sit in the corners, veil drawn, pen in hand, watching the validae orchestrate the dance of succession like a composer who's done this before. Maybe she has. Rumours of executions drift like perfume. Some whispered names vanish from the roster. One concubine is reported ill, then sent to recover in a distant estate. You write none of this in the official record, but your personal journal bleeds with it. They are pruning the garden before the new tree is planted. Ayla appears at your chamber door late one night, eyes wide, hands shaking. "They're moving girls," she whispers, "reassigning favourites. I heard my name." You let her inside, let her sit, let her breathe. "I don't want to be favoured," she says, eyes locked on the floor. "I just want to remain." You take her hand, then do as they ask, and forget your own desires. She looks at you sharply. "Is that what you've done?" You don't answer, because you're not sure anymore. Somewhere along the way, your survival stopped being just about safety. It became something else. Purpose, memory, revenge, maybe. You walk her back to her chamber just before dawn, where an attendant waits to redress her, in a robe of new colour, violet and gold. She is being placed as a companion to one of the princes, a political choice, a warning. The new Sultan, his name not yet spoken aloud, will be announced soon. You already know which son it will be. Not because someone told you, but because the air has shifted around him. The palace bends toward power before it is made official, and with him comes the rise of a new Haseki Sultan. Not you, but you knew that already. You stand behind the validae when the final pronouncement is read. You hold the ceremonial ink. You write his name in bold letters beneath the official seal. You watch as the chamber erupts in voices of praise, and yet you know what the others don't. You know which women vanished, which words were swallowed, which decisions were made behind veils and smoke. You know who truly ruled in those final weeks. And one day, when the world forgets, you will write it again. That night you return to your chamber. No attendants, no guards, just you and the candle and the journal that now feels heavier than ever before. You write the final entry of this volume. I was not the favourite. I was not the mother. I was the memory. And when they tell the story of this palace, they will forget the names, but they will not forget the woman who watched, who wrote, who lived long enough to see the curtain fall and stayed to write the next act. You close the journal, wrap it in linen, and place it in the hollow behind the tile, not buried, just waiting. So now, as the halls of the palace stretch into a new reign, the story doesn't end, it merely shifts shape. You remain in your quiet chamber, a little older, a little harder, your fingers still ink-stained, your eyes sharpened by what they've seen and what they've survived. The new Sultan walks different corridors. The favourites wear different scents. But you've become a constant, a still point in the whirling machinery of court life. You keep writing, not every day, not every moment and whole, but often enough that the story stays alive. You remember names no one dares speak. You record what others intentionally forget. Not because you seek vengeance, not because you want recognition, but because someone must. Someone has to hold on to the thread, to remind the world that women lived here, not just to be touched or taken, but to think, to watch, to shape. In the cool quiet of the archive, where light slants in through narrow windows and dust dances like old secrets, you file your final volume. You run your fingers along the spines of past pages, each one whispering memories back at you. Ayla's laughter, the scent of boiled rosewater, the sound of a mother weeping behind a closed door. And then one morning you don't wake to the usual knock. No summons, no task. Just a quiet chamber and the distant song of gulls wheeling above the Bosphorus. You smile to yourself. Maybe it's time, not for an escape, but for an ending, or rather a passing of the quill. You dip your pen one last time, and on a fresh page you write, "Let the next woman pick up where I left off," because the harem never sleeps, and it just waits.